Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to episode 44 of Buha's Block. I am back from Las Vegas. I am semi-rested, semi-recovered. 7 days in Vegas is about the maximum that one's body can withstand, and I pushed it to the limit, but I had a fun time out there. And it's always one of my favorite trips, one of my favorite events of the NBA calendar. But we are back to our regular scheduled programming. And since there are no roster updates since my last episode, I want to take a deeper look at this roster and ask one question for each player on the roster. And for the back end guys, there are a couple of generalized questions, but for the top 9, there's one question per player. And I want to just get into what is on my mind this offseason and entering the season, and just the important storylines and questions and topics that are going to determine the Lakers' success at large, but also the individual success of each player. But before we begin, as always, for those on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell to stay up to date anytime I drop a video. During this episode, if you are enjoying it, please be sure to hit that like button and drop a comment. And then for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Also, if you leave a 5-star review and leave a written comment and ask a mailbag question, I will answer it in my next mailbag. But with that said, let's get into it. So question number 1 is about LeBron James, and it is, how long can he keep this up? And on the one hand, the answer is it's LeBron James. So of course he is going to keep this up. He has kept it up for 21 years. He has staved off father time in a way that no superstar has ever been able to do it. Like, we can talk about where LeBron ranks and this accolade and that accolade and the finals record, and just comparing him to Michael Jordan and Kareem and Magic and Larry and Kobe and Duncan and Shaq and Steph and KD and all the greats, and leaving a couple, Wilt and Russell, and like, you could go down the list of all the greatest players and how LeBron stacks up and make pros and cons. But one thing that he has done that none of those players have been able to do is remain this great, this deep into his career. Kareem is really the only player that we can compare him to from that regard. But LeBron, at this stage of his career, this deep into his career, this age, is better than Kareem was. At times last year, he looked like a top 5 player, and I would peg him right now as something like the 9th to 12th best player in the league, maybe 8th to 12th, somewhere in that range. You can make the case. But the fact that we're having that debate with a guy who's about to be 40, with a guy who's about to be in year 22, is just insane. But that also brings me to the flip side of this, and that's the other hand. And the other hand is that, as the cliche goes, father time is undefeated, and at some point he is going to come for LeBron James. Now, LeBron, in my opinion, is too skilled and talented and smart and athletic to ever be a bad player or an even average player. I think he's always going to be a good to really good player as long as he plays. Even if he plays until like 43, 44, 45, I still think he's going to be good to really good. But good to really good is good for a 40-something-year-old, but it's not good for a player who you need to be a top 2 player on this roster, and ideally a top 20, if not top 15 guy in the league. And so what I'm basically getting at is there going to be any slippage from LeBron next season? And if so, how steep is that slippage going to be? Because again, he's going to be age 40, year 22. It would be totally reasonable, if not expected, for there to be some slippage from his game from last season. He's also going to be coming off of a summer with Team USA, and we've seen with several guys through the last few years that has been taxing. I mean, look no further than a guy like Austin Reaves, who's younger and at the beginning of his career, and like it certainly affected him at the beginning of last season. I would say even the first like quarter to a third of the season, Austin Reaves appeared to be physically and just visibly affected by his Team USA run. So this is going to be even more taxing, arguably, for LeBron playing at the Olympics, and you're playing the best players in the world, and the game's more physical, and certainly he's on a more talented team, and doesn't have to necessarily play a large role, but he is starting. He has been one of the best players on the team, and I expect him to close and be a big part of the team. So it's like, yes, in theory, Team USA can limit his workload and his minutes, but he's still a big part of the team, and that's going to have some level of impact. So I say all this just to say that I expect LeBron to still be an elite player. And if I had to make a projection, I would still have him as a top 20, if not top 15 guy. But any slippage below that level, and I just don't think the Lakers have the top end talent to really compete with the top of the league. And we're going to get into Anthony Davis, and I don't want to step on that question or that topic yet. So I'm going to leave that, put that to the side. But if LeBron is not a top 20 player next season, and again, it would be understandable either due to health or age or some combination of both, I think that lowers, if not eliminates, any possibility of the Lakers winning the championship. So we can talk about what moves the Lakers need to make, what the holes on the roster are, how JJ Redick is going to implement new concepts and actions and structure, and how he's going to revamp the offense and the defense, and how he's going to play the best players on the team, and this and that. But when it comes down to it, the Lakers need LeBron James and Anthony Davis to both be top 15, if not top 12 guys to truly have a shot at winning a championship. And that top end production from those two will offset some of the depth concerns, some of the roster flaws and weaknesses. And like just having two guys at that level gives you a shot against just about anyone. So for me, it's just, how does LeBron continue to age? How long does he continue to do this? And if there is any slippage, is it minimal, where he goes from being like the 8th or 9th or 10th best player in the NBA to like the 16th, 17th, 18th? Or is it more he goes from 8, 9, 10 to like 24, 25, 26? And at that point, I just don't know if that top two combination is good enough to win a championship. It really comes down to like, can AD take a step, and can he be the best player in the world or a top 3 player? And I think it's possible. And it also brings me to the Anthony Davis question, which is there another level to get to? In my opinion, Anthony Davis is the Lakers' best player. I thought he was the best and most valuable player on the team last season. I thought he was arguably like somewhere in that 6 to 8 range if we were ranking players. I really like, people didn't consider him in that conversation, but I think he did. I think he was right there with guys like a Jason Tatum and an Anthony Edwards. Probably would slot both of those guys ahead of him, though I think it's a conversation. And I thought AD was right there at like number 7 or 8 in the league. But you have that. You have the season he just had, and it was a Defensive Player of the Year caliber season, and it was an All-NBA second team and really borderline back-end first team, in my opinion, type season. It's just the Lakers didn't have the success in the standings to warrant like MVP votes or All-NBA votes or whatever, or first team All-NBA votes. So you have that, but then you also have Team USA now, where he is playing with the best players in the world, the best players in the NBA, the best players in American basketball. And in my opinion, he's arguably been the best player on the team. He's arguably been the most impactful player on the team. And you could make the case for several players, including LeBron also being in that conversation. But to me, and it's only been a few games, and it's only been exhibition games. The Olympics have not started yet. But one of those games also included playing Serbia and playing Nikola Jokic and swatting one of his shots like a volleyball. So like, Anthony Davis has been really impressive this summer. He was really impressive last season. He's really had a couple of impressive seasons in a row after he had a couple of seasons that were injury riddled and not quite up to his standards. But since then, he's had 2 remarkable seasons in a row. And I think he continues to be underappreciated and underdiscussed. And now I think he's kind of having a second phase of his career, a second like breakout of his career, of people appreciating him again and just remembering his dominance and his skill and his talent and his versatility and just all the different things that he could do. His jumper has looked good with Team USA, and Anthony Davis is going to have the ball in his hands more next season, as JJ Redick has talked about, running the offense more through him, using him like a Jokic, like a Sabonis, and having him be this passing hub and this DHO hub. So that could lead to better assist numbers, just better numbers overall as being a higher usage guy. And I think we could see, again, not a breakout season, but a reminder season from Anthony Davis of like this is how great I am. For me, it's like if LeBron is slipping a little bit, or at least trending toward that direction just because of his age and because of the mileage and because of all those factors, the Lakers need Anthony Davis to make up some ground in the best player alive discussion. He seems to be trending toward that discussion of being a top 5 player, if not, but knocking on the door top 3. So if he can get in that mix with Embiid and Shea and Giannis, and I think Luka and Jokic are the 2 best players, and I don't know if anyone's quite catching them next season, but if he gets in that conversation with those guys, and you could throw Steph Curry in there, Jason Tatum, Anthony Edwards, like that group of 5-6 guys who right now are all unanimously considered top 7, top 8 guys, and he could get to the top of that group or close to the top of that group, I do think that puts the Lakers in a different position from a contention standpoint, especially if LeBron can maintain his level and still be a top 12, 13 guy, whatever. And then all of a sudden, if you got a top 4 guy and a top 12 guy, that's the foundation of a championship team. And you got to get lucky. You got to be healthy. Like there's all these factors that go into it. But at least as a foundation, having 2 guys at that level is a great start, and a start that puts you ahead of a lot of other teams. So I think for Anthony Davis, is there another level to get to? Can he get back to being the New Orleans Anthony Davis, the guy who was in conversations for best player in the league or top 3 player, or even the championship season when I think a lot of people had him at number 2, number 3, number 4, depending on how you viewed things. So Anthony Davis, like, can he officially get back to that level of being considered a top 5 guy, producing like a top 5 guy? I think he's trending in that direction. I think he's been building up to it the last couple of years. I think he's showing out with Team USA, and I think this is going to continue into the season. And if it does, I think an MVP is within the realm of possibility. I think first team All-NBA is within the realm of possibility. And I think the Lakers fighting for home court is within the realm of possibility. So all these things are going to likely come down to Anthony Davis and his health, his greatness, and him returning to the player that he was from like 2015 to 2020. And if that happens, I think we start to rewrite the ceiling of this Lakers team, regardless of if they make a move, though I still think they will likely need to make one. The next question is about Austin Reaves, and it's, will JJ Redick be the first coach to fully unleash Austin Reaves? And what I mean by that is if you go through Austin Reaves' 3 seasons with the Lakers, you could argue each one of them has been mismanaged to some extent. So let's start with his rookie season, because if you go back, like, it's understandable to an extent. He's this undrafted rookie out of Arkansas. He's joining this team that has LeBron and AD and Russ. They have championship aspirations. They have all these accomplished veterans, though aging, and like half that roster was out of the league by the next summer. But that aside, like, Austin joins this group, and from talking to people with the team at the time and also just using my eyes, Austin was at worst the Lakers' 5th best player. And I thought you could make the case for higher. Like, it was obviously LeBron and AD at the top, and then you had Russ, who's having a rough year, but still was putting up numbers at least, I guess. And then Malik Monk and Austin. And like, those were the Lakers' top 5 players. It felt like the Lakers left a lot on the table with Austin in terms of minutes and reps and continuity and chemistry and all that stuff. So that's his rookie season. His second season, all of a sudden, Kendrick Nunn is healthy, so the Lakers want to incorporate him. You still have Russ to start the season. You add Lonnie Walker, you add Pat Beverly, and there is a roster crunch. There is a backcourt crunch with this group. And I'll never forget, opening night, Matt Ryan played more than Austin Reaves in Austin's second season. And he still is having these games where he's not starting, he's not closing, he is not playing more than 20 minutes, And it did not make any sense. And then eventually, I believe with 10 games left in the season, he gets inserted into the starting lineup. And that's when you start to see the lineup of D'Lo, Austin, Vando, LeBron, and AD. And that's the group that helps the Lakers, enter the playoffs with momentum. And then once in the playoffs, go on a conference finals run. And throughout that run, Austin was on balance the Lakers' third best player and was certainly their third best player in the Denver series. But then you're like, why did it take 70 games for Austin to start and have this type of role? And then he has the good playoff run. He has the Team USA stint. And he's one of the best players there. Got the shoe deal, and he's blowing up. And Austin gets the bigger contract. The Lakers pay him the most that they could pay him. And so he enters his third season as the third guy in the pecking order. Over the summer, Darvin Ham had called him a future all-star. And then 9 games into the season, Austin gets benched. And he's benched for a couple months. And he was not playing well at the time, and he was coming off of Team USA, and he also was dealing with some lower extremity injuries. It was just another situation of like, why is your third or at worst fourth best player being benched? It just did not make sense, especially when you're touting this guy as a future all-star. You're refusing to include this guy in trade talks, and you're basically making him untouchable unless it's like a top 20 or even top 15 guy coming back. And then you're benching him, and you're having all these games where he's playing like under 28 minutes a night, and you're playing Cam Reddish and Taurean Prince over him. I just didn't get it. And now JJ Redick has been talking up Austin Reaves and his potential role and how excited he is to coach him. And the Lakers have talked about him being one of their young core players, along with Max Christie and Rui Hachimura. So I'm curious to see, like, is Austin Reaves finally treated like the third best player on the team that he's basically been all 3 years he's been in LA? And I'm not necessarily even talking about like shot attempts or ball in his hands, but more so like actually treated by the coach as like, you are a full-time starter. You are not coming off the bench. And if JJ Redick can do that, and it's relatively simple, it's just empower your third best guy and give him a role that makes sense. I think that will lead to the best version of Austin, and perhaps the breakout season that many were hoping for last season can happen this season. And the next question is about D'Angelo Russell, and is he going to be a Laker on February 8th? And February 8th is the day after the trade deadline. This upcoming season is going to be February 7th. But as we know, the Lakers tried to trade D'Angelo Russell up until the 2024 trade deadline. They have tried to trade him unsuccessfully this offseason, and they're going to try and trade him this upcoming season ahead of the trade deadline. Like, that was one of the first things that I reported for The Athletic right after he resigned, was that the Lakers are going to try and trade him, and they have been trying to trade him, and teams have been reluctant to take on his contract just because they don't have to, because they can demand more from the Lakers right now and just wait until the trade deadline to see if the Lakers will be desperate enough to make a move. Teams have no really reason to trade for D'Lo right now, and that's been a complicating factor for sure. But if for whatever reason they're unable to trade him, I just wonder, like, what is his role next season, and what does that look like next to LeBron, next to AD, next to Austin Reaves, under JJ Redick in the new 5-out system that he wants to implement, running the ball more through Anthony Davis as the hub of the offense. And so with D'Lo, I just wonder, like, one thing that I've had lobbed my way from several fans has been, do the Lakers move him to the bench, and does that make more sense? Between him and Austin, I would lean more toward D'Lo coming off the bench and just being a sixth man. But you have to have D'Lo on board with that. And going back to that 2023 Denver series, the Lakers were afraid that they would lose D'Lo if they benched him. Going back to the beginning of last season, as I reported earlier in the season, the Lakers were afraid to bench D'Lo instead of Austin because they thought they would lose him. But with D'Lo, it's like, if you are looking to trade him at some point, does it make more sense to just rip the Band-Aid off and say, you're going to be a six man, like, you're coming off the bench. We're going to go with the guys that we know are going to be here for a long time, or at least for a couple more years, whereas you are short term. You're either walking next summer or you are getting traded by the deadline. He didn't have a market this summer. And I just wonder, when it comes down to it, like, is D'Lo still a Laker, and how do they figure that out in terms of his role? Is he starting? Does he take a step back for Austin, or like, What does that look like? Or is it just like business as usual and they're trying to trade him and they do end up trading him, and then all of a sudden 50 games into the season, the Lakers have to reset the starting lineup and the rotation, and they have to implement a new player or players. So that to me is like the most interesting thing with D'Lo, is just which way does this situation go? Do the Lakers end up standing pat and just keeping him and saying, we believe in that 2023 run, we believe in the run to close 2024, and like we want to see this group? Or is it all the smoke since D'Angelo Russell re-signed back in 2023, which is that they're going to try and trade him. They have been trying to trade him, and they've so far been unsuccessful, but that doesn't mean they won't be able to move him by the deadline. So this could play out one of two ways, and either way, it's going to have a significant impact on the Lakers season. Next player is Rui Hachimura, and it's, can he improve with the little things? And this was ultimately the reason Rui Hachimura did not start last season until February. A big part of the reason why the coaching staff had issues with Rui was his focus, his awareness, boxing out, rebounding, making the extra pass, reading closeouts, and just some of the intricacies of being a role player and being an effective role player around stars and on a good team. And with Rui, like the skill and the talent are there. He's improved as a shooter. Last year, he showed that his shooting was real from the 2023 playoffs, and was a 40% 3-point shooter on the season. And the talent and just his ability to score and can dunk on people, can finish through contact, is a physical body, can post up mismatches and just turn and score on them. So like Rui has a lot of skill and a lot of talent. Like that part is not debatable, but the defense and locking in to his assignment for the night and making sure he's reading coverages off the ball and helping and just balancing all the things that go into being a good team defender, but also a good individual defender, being more physical in the paint and battling guys that are like sized or even a little bit smaller than him, and being able to win those matchups consistently when it's not a post up or a mismatch, and just making sure he is active and engaged at all times. So with Rui, whether he starts or comes off the bench, I think it's interesting that, again, he's been mentioned far more than Jarred Vanderbilt by Rob Pelinka and JJ Redick this offseason. So I anticipate, as of now, if the Lakers were making a starting lineup, I think Rui would be the fifth starter. But regardless of whatever his role ends up being, can he do more of those role player things at a higher level? Can he rebound better? Can he defend better? Can he navigate screens better? Can he be a better help defender? And just buy into all those little things that I think Jarred Vanderbilt does at a higher level. And I think Jarred Vanderbilt will always do those things at a higher level than Rui. But if Rui can close the gap, I think his offensive talent, particularly as a scorer and a shooter, and really emerged as a strong cutter last season along the baseline. And just think about all those times LeBron and AD and D'Lo found him for baseline cuts, for dunks, and for fouls, and for layups, and all that stuff. Like, if he can do that and just shrink some of the dirty work and role player gap between him and a guy like a Jarred Vanderbilt, then all of a sudden, I think Rui Hachimura makes a lot of sense as a starter. If it was close, like at that point, it probably makes the most sense. And then, I think he can fill that role admirably and continue to build his trade value. And maybe the Lakers end up flipping him at the deadline for something else because of the strong season that Rui had. Like, again, the talent is there. He's got the mid-range jumper. He's got the post game. He's developed the 3-point shot. Like, he's got the scoring repertoire. And especially on this team being slotted as like the fourth or fifth option, like he fits in perfectly there. It's just a matter of basically, can you rebound and defend better, but also can you screen better? Can you continue to cut well and continue to make the extra pass and read closeouts and like all those things. So I think with Rui, it's just doing the little things more consistently. And that's something that I think he really needs to work on this summer. And if he can do that, again, I think he makes a lot of sense as a starter because he's got the talent, he's got the physical gifts. It's just about putting it together more consistently. The next question is about Jarred Vanderbilt, and it's how real was his offensive improvement before his injury last season. And if you remember, that final 2 to 3 weeks before Vanderbilt got injured on February 1st in Boston, the Lakers had figured out, like, he had multiple double figure scoring games. The Lakers were using him effectively in the middle of the floor as a screener, as a cutter, as a DHO guy. And the Lakers were doing similar things to what Golden State does with Draymond, leveraging how defenses guard him against them and using that to either create scoring opportunities for himself or, more importantly, creating scoring opportunities for his teammates. So be it a pin-in flare screen or a DHO into Vando rolling into wide open space, or him back cutting a defender that's preoccupied with what's going on the weak side. Like, Vando was like, I think a lot has been lost in terms of like the successes of last season and the successes of Darvin Ham's coaching. And this is one of them. And it did take too long, and he still did not play Vando enough with the starters and should have gone back to that lineup. But in terms of using Vando, they did unlock something that final like 2 to 3 weeks before the injury. And I think JJ Redick needs to pick back up where that left off and use Vando in similar ways. And it would help if Vando could become a 32-33% three-point shooter. But even if he can't, using him in similar ways, like, there's probably a ceiling there come playoff time, and like teams can scheme for that and not give him as much space and like test his ball handling and his finishing in a crowd and his shot making. And like there's still ways to test Vando offensively, but in a regular season where you don't have the same level of scouting and game prep, and it's just much more your base coverages and kind of the base scouting report, I think the Lakers can continue to take advantage of teams looking at Vando as a non-shooter, a non-spacer, and defending him a certain way, and then the Lakers using that against them. And maybe teams will adjust, and then the Lakers will have to counter that, and that could actually prepare them for the playoffs, and that could be viewed as a positive. But with Jarred Vanderbilt, it's just like, how high can he raise his offensive ceiling? And if he can raise it to a certain level, then it's sort of the inverse of the Rui conversation of, if Vando gets to a certain level offensively, then he probably makes more sense as the starter and playing a bigger role between the two players, because he's obviously a really good rebounder, a really good, if not borderline elite defender, and he's got more skill with his cutting and his passing and even his ball handling, growing up playing guard and point guard at times throughout his like high school career. Like he's got more, like he's got some of that Lamar Odom to him that I think people kind of overlook when they talk about his game. Now the shooting is a problem, and even I think the catching and the finishing, like that's the thing that I think has been a bigger issue sometimes, is like, it's not just that he will turn down open threes or he will brick open threes. It's like even him as a roller and a cutter sometimes, like he was fumbling passes or not finishing, and like that stuff needs to be cleaned up. But with Rui and with Vando, it's like, which guy can really shore up the weaknesses of their game, and again, not turn them into strengths necessarily, because I don't think Vando's ever going to be a plus shooter or a plus offensive player necessarily, and I don't think Rui's ever going to be this stalwart of like role player tasks and duties and all the little things. But if he can get better at it, and if Vando can get better offensively, like, one, it just makes the Lakers better, but two, it just brings better two-way balance and allows both guys to fit more in different lineups and just have a level of flexibility that they don't currently have. The next question is about Gabe Vincent, and it's, can he return to his Miami form? And it wasn't that long ago, but if you go back to 2023, Gabe Vincent was the starting point guard on a Miami Heat team that made the NBA Finals as an 8 seed. That version of Gabe Vincent, that's the version that they signed to the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. And remember, they didn't use all of it, but they used most of it. So that version of Gabe Vincent, the tough shot maker, the catch and shoot threat, and the defensive pest that can defend point guards and even some shooting guards, like that's the guy that the Lakers need. And if he had some nice moments later in the season with his defense, I thought he had some stretches in that New Orleans game. I believe it was the regular season one. I don't remember if it was the regular season one or the play-in game. I want to say it was the regular season one, but if Gabe Vincent can shoot 37-38% on catch and shoot threes, and he can play solid defense. Doesn't even have to be good defense, but like above average defense, solid to good. If he can just be like that and be healthy, like the Lakers are going to get their bang for their buck. And he also will then be a potential trade candidate. And the Lakers could use a 3-and-D guard. So like at worst, they're just adding a 3-and-D guard into the rotation. But in the case that the Lakers still want to trade him or have to trade him to complete a bigger deal, Gabe will have rehabbed his value by showing that he's still that guy, he's still healthy, and that this knee situation is behind him and was just a one-year blip. With Gabe, it's just, can he return to form? What does that look like? And how impactful can that be? And if he's healthy and can contribute, I think he's going to be a critical piece. The next question is about Max Christie, and it's, can he take the leap? And we're talking about Vando and Gabe almost as free agents that the Lakers are adding because those two guys were so injured last season. You could also look at Max Christie as almost a free agent that the Lakers added, going from the role that he had last year. Really only had like 2 stretches where he was actually in the rotation. And so there's a bit of a blank canvas here with Max Christie where we know he profiles as a 3-and-D player and we know he's only 21, but there's still a lot that we don't know about Max and his game and what it looks like if he is getting 15 to 25 minutes a night consistently for 82 games and empowered as like the 8th or 9th man in this rotation. Defensively, he's had impressive performances against star guards. You can defend either backcourt spot and even some small forwards. He's like a 1-3, 1-2.5 defender, which the Lakers can use, especially if he can scale down and be more of a point of attack guy. He's been a 40% catch and shoot 3-point shooter over his past couple of years. He led the team in catch and shoot 3-point percentage last season. He's also been the Lakers' best rebounding perimeter player. He was their best rebounder under 6'9" last season. That includes a group of Rui Hachimura, Taurean Prince, Cam Reddish, Austin Reaves, D'Angelo Russell, Gabe Vincent, Spencer Dinwiddie. Max was the best rebounder statistically of that group. And that's the thing, like with Max, he just does all of the things that you want a role-playing 3-and-D wing to do. He's a good catch and shoot 3-point shooter. He is a solid cutter. He is athletic. He can defend multiple positions. He's a good rebounder. Like, he checks a lot of the boxes. We just haven't seen him do it consistently, in part because he has not had a consistent role yet. It's just been a lot of flashes with him. So this is the season that, like, the Lakers invested in him. They have kept him out of trade talks. Several teams have wanted him throughout the last couple of years, and LA has been reluctant to part with Max Christie. They have valued him. They clearly valued him by signing him to this contract before free agency technically even started. And they're investing $8 million a year, which in the new CBA isn't what it once was, but it's still something. It's still more than a minimum contract. It's still more than the taxpayer MLE. So the Lakers are putting their money where their mouth is with Max Christie and saying, we believe in this guy as a rotation piece, as potentially even a starter one day. And it's now on Max to deliver and to take that leap. If he hits 40% of his threes and defends multiple positions at a high level, like, that is the type of role player the Lakers need around LeBron and AD and Austin and D'Lo, and Max will fit in perfectly. And he does that, and he justifies the contract, but he also gives the Lakers a much needed 2-way rotation player. I think he is going to be, like, if we're picking a Laker to have a breakout season, I think it's Max Christie, and we're going to see now for the first time with a real role, can he do it? And our final rotation player question before we reel off a couple of quicker rapid fire ones for the final 6 players on the roster is Dalton Knecht, and how does he hold up defensively? Because Dalton Knecht has a bag offensively. He can shoot, he can cut, he can drive, he can finish. He is a very talented scorer, and he gets downhill, he draws fouls, he can hit pull-ups and step backs. He can curl around screens and hit shots on the move. He can attack from the weak side. Like, Dalton Knecht is an offensive weapon. You've seen he's been able to run pick and rolls and play make with the roller and weak side shooters and cutters. Like, Dalton Knecht has a lot of skill and talent. And at 23, he is NBA ready. He is ready to be a rotation player. The one question with him is going to be the defensive end. And it's been rough in summer league. You've had guys blowing by him on the perimeter, scoring over him, pushing him around in the paint. And for whatever reason, his athleticism and physicality and force translate much more offensively than defensively. Like you'll see on these drives, he's botting people, he's shouldering people, and he's getting to the rim and either finishing or getting fouled. But defensively, he's getting pushed around. He's not as athletic. He's not as good chasing guys around screens and navigating screens and battling in the paint and all those things. So with him, it's just like, can he be at least passable defensively? He's going to have a target on his back as this rookie shooter who we could potentially play off the floor if we target him and either get him into foul trouble or score on him multiple times. Like teams will test him and try to do that and try to play him off the floor. So if Dalton can improve and figure out ways to better leverage his athleticism and his strength defensively and just start to be a better team defender, is never going to be a lockdown defender, but can he be, again, not even necessarily average, but like slightly below average or passable, and then within a team scheme, at least be solid and know where to be and compete in the paint, compete on the glass, and make his rotations not only in a timely manner, but really in a proactive manner, then I think Dalton Knecht can be a top 9 rotation player on this team, if not potentially play his way into an even bigger role. But if he struggles defensively and he's got this giant red target on his chest and on his back everywhere he goes, and teams are constantly targeting him in ISOs and pick and rolls and testing him as the low man, then that's where the Lakers run into some issues and he might have to have his role reduced. And maybe he's a 1 shift a game guy or a 2 shift a game guy, but the shifts are like 4 to 6 minutes and he's not playing as much. Whereas if he can be at a certain level defensively, given his offensive skill and given the way he's going to fit around LeBron and AD and Austin and D'Lo, I think like he could be a very valuable off-ball weapon for the Lakers, just as like a catch and shoot guy. And that's to say nothing of him coming off screens, coming off floppy actions, and him attacking closeouts and all that stuff. Like there is some clear upside here with Dalton Knecht. It's just going to be, can he hold his own defensively? And if so, I expect him to have a notable role with this team next season. And now a couple of quicker questions. One, with Christian Wood and Jaxson Hayes. And it's a 2-part question. Which player is going to win the backup center battle? And can either player be playable in a playoff setting? So right now, if I had to peg a favorite, I would peg Jaxson Hayes as the favorite for the backup center battle. I thought his highs last season were a bit higher than Christian Wood's. Christian had the better first half of the season, but Jaxson had the better second half of the season. And it could just come down to Christian Wood's shooting, because Christian Wood shot just 31% on threes last season. And if he's going to shoot that poorly as a stretch 5, as a pick and pop big, then, you know, he was actually solid at moments defensively and certainly solid on the glass. But I think he needs a certain level of offense to really justify him having a role. And I think Jaxson Hayes just brings a lot to the table with his athleticism and his length and his finishing, and even some of the playmaking he had in the short roll. And like, I just think he brings a certain motor and a certain energy and activity to the Lakers that they otherwise lack at times, outside of maybe like a guy like Jarred Vanderbilt. So just who wins this backup center battle, and how does that go? And then which one, if either, can play in a playoff setting? And I think with Jaxson, it needs to continue to be him not fouling as much and improving as a rim protector, a rim deterrent, and just overall his defensive awareness and execution, because he's not been a good rim protector. He has not been a good paint defender. And then with Christian Wood, it's, can he maintain some of the defensive progress he showed last season and then also return to form as a scorer and a shooter? And if either one of those guys improves in those regards, I think they potentially could be playoff performers. But as of right now, I have a lot of skepticism with that. Clearly, the Lakers do, with JJ Redick coming out and basically saying that the Lakers want another center and want a better backup, burly, tough, defensive-minded guy. And like, I think they probably need that regardless of what happens with Christian and Jaxson. But those guys have some holes in their games that if they can improve upon a little bit, again, we're talking about marginal improvements here, all of a sudden they become a bit more playable. And then the final question is taking a look at Cam Reddish, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Maxwell Lewis, and Bronny James. Are any of these guys playable this season? And like right now, all 4, based on what we saw last season and what we have seen this summer from them, like all 4 project to be on the outside looking in of the rotation. And I think there are legitimate questions with all of them in terms of, can they actually play on a good team, on a team with playoff aspirations, on a team with championship aspirations, like even in a regular season setting, like as rotation guys. And I have serious concerns, like with Cam, his ball handling, his finishing, his shooting. He's basically been unplayable offensively and regressed defensively last year after a really impressive November stretch. And part of that was due to injuries, but he was given plenty of opportunities and he just has not been able to put it together really ever. So you got Cam, you got Jalen Hood-Schifino coming off back surgery. He really struggled last year in garbage time, was given a rotation opportunity a couple times, struggled in those opportunities, did play well in the G League. And that's like the one kernel of optimism right now, aside from his pedigree. But looking at the guys drafted after him and their success, like just Jalen Hood-Schifino is facing a lot of pressure, a lot of scrutiny this upcoming season. And if he cannot pop a little bit, even in limited minutes, and even if it's just as simple as like looking better in garbage time and flashing some of the skills and the talent that the Lakers drafted him for, like if he can't do that, then there are serious questions about his NBA future, like next summer. And then Maxwell Lewis has had some flashes in summer league, but has not quite put it together on either end. Like he's made some step back threes and he's made some plays defensively. Like he had that block on Cam Whitmore at the rim. And I think he's tried to be more active and engaged, but he's not quite put it together. And then Bronny James, and until these last couple of games, had really struggled in summer league. And I thought there was a clear shift in his game going from San Francisco at the Cali Classic to Las Vegas with summer league there, in terms of just the competition that he was facing. And he did not look as good defensively, and his shot was not falling, and he looked lost out there at times. And he has since played much better in these last couple of games against Atlanta and Cleveland. Shot has fallen, and he's looked much more confident. And maybe these are steps in the right direction, and he's going to close out summer league strong, and we're going to have a sense of optimism with him entering training camp. But for the most part, he has not looked like a rotation caliber player yet. He's looked like someone who's going to need to spend most of the year in the G League. And that's fine because he's the number 55 pick and he's just 19 and he's a year removed from heart surgery. But like there was not a lot to be encouraged by through the first few games of summer league for Bronny. Now that has changed with these last couple games, but there's a what have you done for me lately type nature with this, of like if he struggles for the final game or two, then all of a sudden that conversation swings back to the original feelings of just like, okay, he's not ready yet. So still a lot to be determined with him, still a lot to be determined with all these guys. And this is why they almost certainly have to do a consolidation trade to trade a couple of these guys, open up a couple of roster spots, open up some financial flexibility, and just give them some better optionality and just some better talent on this roster. And having guys like Gary Trent Jr. and Taurean Prince sign for minimum contracts when you have a Cam Reddish sitting there with a minimum contract, like that's just, it's a tough look, right? I like the top 9, but outside of that, it gets rough really fast. And I think they need to improve the back end of this roster. But that'll do it for today's episode. For those watching on YouTube, drop your questions below. If there's one that you disagree with, or there's just a different question that you have for some of these players, let me know in the comment section. And then also be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and like this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back early next week. Enjoy your weekend. I will talk to you soon.